Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The discussion today is on a new topic. This is topic 2, where we will discuss about the methodology of Islamic economics. The following are the main references that I use for the discussion. So you need to make sure that you read these articles and also some other articles that I have shared on iTalim. What you will learn in this topic is the following. First, we need to understand what is knowledge, especially knowledge related to Islam, and how this knowledge is important in the process to develop Islamic economics. And that's related to the discussion about the methodology and epistemology of Islamic economics. In this chapter also, we will discuss about the importance of Sharia as the basis for the knowledge related to Islamic economics, and when it's come to the applications such as in deriving fatwa or rulings, and we are more concerned about rulings related to economics or muamalat, we will discuss about the process to derive ijtihad, and therefore we will discuss about usulul fiqh, a brief discussion on that, the position of fiqh, and then also we will discuss about the overall methodology of Islamic economics. At the end of the discussion, we will discuss some issues related to the methodology of Islamic economics. In the last discussion, I have explained to you this diagram. Again, very quickly, the purpose of showing this diagram is to highlight that when we want to develop knowledge, we need to make sure that the knowledge that we have is the correct knowledge, because ultimately that knowledge should guide us on our faith and lead us to identify the truth. And here are some hierarchy in the process to develop knowledge. I have 4 boxes here. If there is another box above epistemology, the title of that box should be worldview. Because given this diagram, worldview is the main paradigm upon which we derive our methodology. And then from that worldview, we would establish our epistemology. What is an epistemology? Here are some of the definitions of epistemology. It is the branch of philosophy that studies the nature of knowledge, its presuppositions and foundations, and its extent and validity. In short, we can say that epistemology is about the theory of knowledge. So in any theory about knowledge, we would ask questions about the nature and definition of truth, because knowledge in essence should lead us to the truth. We need to screen out all false ideas, because knowledge should be pure. Pure knowledge would make human being realize the ultimate meaning of the truth. And in the teaching of Islam, to realize about the existence of Allah Ta'ala as the only God worthy of being worshipped, that's the essence of knowledge. So when we say epistemology, part of the discussion of epistemology is to understand the nature of knowledge. In the previous discussion, I have explained to you that from an Islamic worldview, we look at knowledge very differently than the secular worldview. Here we will see some examples of nature of knowledge in Islam which are not there in the secular context of knowledge. The first one is that when we say the Islamic epistemology, First, we admit that Allah is Al-Alim. He is the ultimate knower of everything. Therefore, His knowledge is limitless. And we admit that as human being, our knowledge is limited. This is part of admission, tawheed, that we have about the attributes of Allah Ta'ala, that He is all-knower and none escapes from His knowledge. This is part of tawheed. We believe in the attributes of Allah Ta'ala and the names of Allah Ta'ala, such as Allah Al-Alim, Allah Al-Hakim, and many other names related to knowledge. The second point about the Islamic epistemology, we also argue that there are levels of knowledge. There are knowledge that we call as ilm al-yaqeen and ainul yaqeen. For example, knowledge of certainty. This comes from Al-Quran and As-Sunnah. When we read Surah At-Takathur, A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim, kalla law ta'lamuna ilmal yaqin latarawunnal jahim thumma latarawunnaha 'ainal yaqin. You may look at the tafsir of this surah. However, what I want to show from the verse of Al-Quran about these two phrases is that when Allah says, Kalla law ta'lamuna ilmal yaqin, this ilmal yaqin about the existence of hellfire, paradise, and many things that we consider as al-ghaib, we accept about the truth of it to be an absolute truth because the knowledge comes from the revealed books. That's a form of knowledge that we have yaqeen, highest confidence, because it's come from the primary sources of knowledge in Islam, Quran or the Sunnah. There are also some other types of knowledge that we may still have yaqeen, but we get that yaqeen from our observation, such as by looking at it, ain al-yaqeen. And in that surah, At-Takathur, Allah mentions that those people who deny about the hereafter, about the punishment of Allah Ta'ala, about the hellfire, even though Allah has revealed to them the kitab and the messenger, when Allah brings forth the Jahannam in front of them, ثُمَّ لَتَرَوُنَّهَا عَيْنَ الْيَقِينِ, then only they will see with their eyes of certainty. Remember that the secular people would argue that they need to see evidence. And because in this world, we cannot see many of the al-ghaib mentioned in Al-Quran, these people consider those claims to be falsehood. What we learn here is that whatever claims that come from Al-Quran, that's to be the absolute truth. That's part of the Islamic epistemology, and any knowledge that we get from our observation, such as from our senses, these are acquired knowledge that should make us having more confidence and yaqeen about the claim in the divine text. Also important to note here is that even if we cannot find any acquired knowledge that would support any claim in the Quran or the Sunnah, Al-Quran and Sunnah remain to be the absolute truth. So these are types of yaqeen that we have about knowledge. The next thing here, we also say that in the Islamic epistemology, we admit that human knowledge vary from one person to another person. Not just that, the other creations of Allah Ta'ala, apart from human, we have angels, jinn, and other living things. They have certain types of knowledge that are beneficial to them, that Allah has bestowed upon them, so that this knowledge would guide them to serve their purpose of existence. Next, we also say that in the Islamic epistemology, knowledge can be absolute. For example, the revealed knowledge, Quran and Sunnah, and therefore other types of knowledge are relative, such as the acquired knowledge. This form of knowledge, such as the knowledge about the economy, are something that we observe from time to time, and some of the findings may change according to the change of the environment, the change that happens in the society, and many other factors. Because of that, there is a probabilistic nature of knowledge arises out of the limitations of human knowledge. Any knowledge that we acquire through our intellectual subjects to some level of errors. We cannot claim that our knowledge is absolute. Unlike the Quran, where Allah mentions in Surah Al-Baqarah verse number 2, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. This book, there is no doubt about it. That's a claim that Allah put at the very beginning of Al-Quran. Human knowledge, we cannot claim that type of certainty. Only absolute knowledge that's come from Allah Ta'ala has that right of claim. So now we have discussed and understand the idea of epistemology. I have explained to you some examples of Islamic epistemology. Realize that in the secular epistemology, notice that in the secular epistemology, none of these claims are there. Because in secular knowledge, human being claims to be the most evolved species, and they have the absolute authority, thinking that they know what's good and bad for the universe. In secular knowledge also, there is a rejection of any revealed knowledge, and therefore the only valid knowledge are knowledge that we gain from our sense of experience through science, for example. So these are some quick comparison that we can make about the Islamic epistemology and the secular epistemology. From this diagram, we find that after we established some understanding about what is epistemology, from there we need to establish certain theoretical perspective. This theoretical perspective, for example, can vary from one school of thought to another school of thought. I give you some example. First, let's go to the Islamic example. In jurisprudence or in fiqh, we have different mazhab. For example, we have the four major mazahib. Mazhab Ash-Shafi'i, Hanbali, Hanafi, and Maliki, for example. They have certain rulings given certain issues, or they have certain hukum given certain issues. Why do they arrive at different types of rulings? The quick answer for that is they have certain theoretical perspective on that issue, and this is mainly because of the methodology they use to derive the rulings, and under methodology they are using certain types of methods. That's some example related to the Islamic jurisprudence of fiqh. Now let's look at example related to economics. Let's consider the secular economics. We have capitalism and socialism. Both are secular. The worldview are secular for both systems, and they are employing secular epistemology. They have different theoretical perspective. Let's focus on capitalism, for example. There are many schools of thought under capitalism. For example, you have classical school. Much modern than classical school, we have the Keynesian school, the monetarist, the neoclassical. These are some school of thoughts, or if you like, these are like mazhab of conventional economics. They have different theoretical perspective. For example, let's say there is a recession going on in the economy. And if you ask the classical economists how to solve this problem of recession, the classical economists and the new classical economists would argue, let the market does the correction. Leave everything to the market. Because they believe in the invisible hand of the market to get to the correction. However, if you ask another school of thought like Keynesian economists, when there is a recession going on, Keynesian economists would say we need to spend more money, such as the government, for example, should take an expansionary fiscal policy. The government should increase the government expenditure, or the government should cut tax. You see, two schools of thought, but different solutions to the same problem. The problem is a recession. Another example, the third school of thought, monetarists, would say that to solve recession, the central bank should apply the expansionary monetary policy. So those are some possible solutions given by the monetary school. So here you see that given the same problem, but because they have different theoretical perspective, they have come out with different solutions. The next question after we understand this idea of theoretical perspective is, why do they have different solutions? Why their approach are different? Because of the methodology and methods that they use to understand the problems and to analyze, therefore coming out with the appropriate solutions. So now we want to know what is methodology and what is method. Methodology and methods are two different things. So when we say methodology, it is a set or system of methods, principles, and rules for regulating a given discipline. The purpose of having a methodology is to ensure that others who follow the sets of methods will come to the same outcome or conclusion. So that's the purpose of having a set of methodology. Each methodological approach claims to reach to the truth in a better or surer manner as compared to the other methodological approach. This is quite common. For example, certain schools of thought would argue that their approach is better to understand the problems as compared to the other schools of thought. And sometimes also you will find some form of rivalry, even in the context of Islamic jurists among the mazhab. For example, it can come down to the point of fanaticism among especially the followers, thinking that their approach is better than the other mazhab. We should be moderate, not extreme. And then economists are keen to find the truth. Therefore, when we want to make an economic analysis, we need to have a proper methodology. So this is the purpose of having a methodology. Ultimately, we want to filter the process so that it leads us to the truth. We need to know that the way how we filter the knowledge is the correct way. And one way to find to the truth is we need to be sure that the process that we use to get to that conclusion is a reliable and valid process. So therefore, we ask this question, how then we are sure that this is the truth? It's about knowing and certain that the approach, the methodology that we use is the right methodology. Methods, therefore, is part of a methodology. Very quickly, usul al fiqh is a methodology. Under usulul fiqh, you have many methods, such as we have ijma', we have qiyas, we have uruf, we have istihsan, and many other methods. Another example, in science, we have the scientific methodology, where we have many methods. Methods that we use to collect the data, methods that we use to do the experiment, methods that we employ to analyze the data. So those are methods, right? The scientific Methodology is the bigger framework requiring many methods. You learn statistical method. That's only one form of method we use to organize and analyze data. I hope you get the idea about the process of deriving knowledge here. So going back to this diagram, from the discussion that we have done so far, I hope now you understand that in order to derive knowledge, it should undergo certain process. Knowledge, ideas, or any claims should be verified, filtered through certain process to validate the claim. We cannot rely on someone who says that he dreamed of something last night about some form of ideas or knowledge, and then he would propose to others to accept that to be the truth. Only prophets have a true dream. Common people like us, our dream can be true, and most of the time it's just another dream. Dream cannot be considered as a valid source to acquire knowledge. In science, in social science, we have certain methodology to validate knowledge. The same in Islam, we have a clear methodology to derive knowledge. So when we want to develop Islamic economics, in this chapter, we want to know how from Quran and Sunnah, and how by using our intellect, we can combine these two sources of knowledge, primary and secondary, to develop Islamic economics. That's the introduction for this chapter. Inshallah, we will continue with another discussion later. See you next time. Wassalam.